Hello class, in this video we're going to be covering 2.7 interval notation, and there are 19 problems in this section. So for the first problem, it's asking us to use either the less than or the greater than symbol. And to distinguish between the two, I recommend that students view this as kind of like a slanted L, and so that's the one that represents less than. This other one that's not facing like a slanted L, this one is the greater than symbol, okay? And so I'm sure you've heard of this in middle school or high school, that the opening of the symbol should be pointing toward the larger number, and then the peak should be pointing at the smaller number, okay? So between these two, when you're trying to decide between negative numbers, which one is larger and which one is smaller, I usually recommend that students think about their bank account. So you're always going to want the higher value in your bank account. And so would you rather have negative $5 in your bank account or negative $15? I'd rather have negative 5 because that means I'm not so far in debt as the negative 15. So then the symbol that's going to go in here is with the opening part facing the negative 5 and the pointy part facing the negative 15. So similarly for problem number 2, it's the same thing. Which of these two would you rather have in your bank account? Again, they're not too far different from one another. You've got 13.71 and 13.72. But this value does put me further in debt. And so this is the value that I'm going to want in my bank account, which means that the opening should be facing that value. Here between negative $4.50 and $2, positive $2, I'm going to want a positive balance in my account versus a negative balance in my account. So the opening should be facing towards the 2. For number 4, you have this value 0.8 with the bar over it, and then a 0.8 alone. The 0.8 with the bar over it represents 0.88888, so on and so forth. For the 0.8, you can't put zeros in as many of them as you want. So essentially, there's just an infinite number of 8s after this and an infinite number of zeros after this. So if I'm comparing these two decimal numbers, they have the same value in the whole number spot. They have the same value in the 10th spot. But here, think of it as money. Would I rather have 88 cents or would I rather have 80 cents? And so in this case, I'd rather have 88 cents. And so the opening should be facing towards the 0.88. For number 5, we have two statements here. They're called inequalities. And they want us to combine the two statements using this conjunction, which is called an or statement. The alternative is an and statement. So this or this versus this and that, okay? And so we're going to be working on the conjunction or. Normally our and statements are combined already into what we call like a triple. And so then you don't ever see this and this just because they're already put together. So if I want to graph x is greater than or equal to 1, what it means is I put my two values that are in question here, which is negative 8 and 1. And on the number line, I made sure to put them in the correct order. So the negative 8, negative value toward the left and the positive value toward the right. A traditional number line looking like this, with 0 in the middle, 1, 2, so on and so forth, and then negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, so on and so forth. So essentially 0 would probably be in here somewhere. Now, for x is greater than or equal to 1, that means everything to the right of 1. These would all be the values that are greater than 1. And so I shaded in that region. Now, for the equal bar symbol, you either use a solid dot or a bracket. Both of these symbols represent the same thing, and that is that the 1 value is included in this set, okay? For x less than negative 8, that would mean everything to the left of negative 8, so I shaded all of that. But since this inequality does not have an equal bar, I used an open circle or parentheses at that end value. And so what that means is that the negative 8 is not included in this set. It's everything to the left of -8, but not -8 itself. So if I'm putting the two statements together, I basically transfer this onto one number line and this onto that same number line. And so what we end up with is that region to the left of -8, and then the region to the right of 1, including 1 itself. So the interval would just be this interval and this interval put together with the union. So the arrow means it's going to the left forever, which means toward -infinity, and then it stops at -8. Now infinities will always get parentheses. You cannot include an infinity with the bracket because infinity represents the number going on and on and on in the negative direction. It's not an actual value. So you cannot put a bracket on an negative infinity or a positive infinity symbol. But the -8 does have an open circle or parentheses, so I kept that symbol. For this interval, it's from 1 on the left to positive infinity on the right. But because this has a solid circle or a bracket, you do need to put the bracket over the 1. And this would be the final answer. And then they also ask you to choose the graph. And so you would select the graph that looks like this one. So for number 6, we have this conjecture, which is an and statement, but they already put it all together. And visually, it looks like X is between -3 and 2. So when you graph it, you're literally shading in the region between -3 and 2. Now this symbol does not have a bar, so I use open circles and parentheses. This symbol does not have a bar, so I use open circle and parentheses. So when I put it in intervals, it's going to be from -3 to 2, but with parentheses on both sides. Okay, so for number 7, it's another problem a lot like the previous problem. And there's quite a few bits that seem redundant, but it's just to get you into the habit of the process. So here I'm going to shade X between 3 and 5. So I've shaded that with my little squiggly. This 3 has a bar, so it'd be solid with a bracket. This 5 does not have a bar, so it'd be an open circle with the parentheses. So when you put it in interval notation, it would be from 3 with the bracket to 5 with the parentheses. Always go from the furthest left of your region to the furthest right of your region. Number 8, X is greater than -7. So I've marked -7. Greater than -7 would be everything to the right. Less than -7 would be everything to the left. Remember, L, left, less. And so there's no bar here, so it's going to be an open circle with a parentheses. So my interval starts here at -7 with the parentheses and goes on forever to infinity. And so that's an infinity with its parentheses. Number 9 says X is less than -3. So I marked -3 and I graphed everything less. Looks like an L, so less than -3 would be everything to the left, another L. Less, left, left. Less, left, left. Now, but this symbol does not have a bar, so I'm going to use the open circle with the parentheses. Now this one's going to the left, so it's going to -infinity, not positive infinity. So if I wanted to put this in interval notation, it would be from -infinity with its parentheses to -3 with another parentheses. I just don't think that number 9 asked me for the interval, so I didn't write it here on the paper. Same thing with number 10, the problem just asked a graph. So we're graphing X is greater than or equal to -2. So greater than -2 means everything to the right. And because it has a bar, it will have a solid dot or a bracket. Now 11 is X is less than 4.3. So you'd mark 4.3 on your number line. Less means everything to the left is shaded. And there is a bar here, so it is a closed dot in a bracket. Number 12, X is between -2 and 3. So on the number line, -2 would be on the left, 3 would be on the right. I shaded everything in between. This symbol does not have a bar, so it's an open circle or parentheses. This 3, it does have a bar, so it'd be a closed circle with the bracket. Now, number 13 is very similar to number 12. They're asking us to graph it. X is obviously between -4 and 3, so you shade between -4 and 3. No bars on either of these inequality symbols, so open circles on both ends, which also means parentheses on both ends. For number 14, we have x is greater than or equal to 2. So we mark 2 on the number line somewhere. And less means I'm going to shade to the left. And then there's a bar, means a solid or a bracket. So I'm going from negative infinity with the parentheses to 2 with the bracket. For number 15, x is greater than 7/2. You would mark 7/2 somewhere on your number line. And then greater means I'm going to shade everything to the right. No bar means it's going to be an open circle or parentheses. So if I'm trying to write this interval in interval notation, we're going to start from the left, which is 7/2 with the parentheses, all the way to the right, which is going to infinity with its own parentheses. For number 16, we have x is less than or equal to 7. So less means left, so you're going to shade the left of 7. And then because there is a bar here, you're going to put a solid dot at 7 with the bracket. So the interval will go from negative infinity with its parentheses to 7 with its bracket. For number 17, we have x is less than -7. So we mark -7 on the number line, and then you're going to shade less, so that's left of -7. And there's no bar here, so it's an open dot or an open parentheses. So this is starting from negative infinity on the left to -7 on the right. Infinity always gets a parentheses, and the -7 gets this parentheses symbol. Not too bad, we only have 2 more problems left. So for number 18, this one's another problem. I think it was like number 1, where it has the 2 statements with the conjecture in the middle. So I'm going to graph x is less than -3, but I do write both numbers that are here. So if I have -3 and 6, then I'm going to write both of those on each of the number lines so that everything lines up for me. Okay, so for the first statement, x is less than -3 means I shade everything to the left of -3, and because of the bar, I put a solid dot in a bracket. Now x is greater than 6 means I'm going to mark it 6 and shade everything greater, which means to the right. There is no equal bar there, so it's going to be an open circle with the parentheses. And your parentheses should always open toward the shaded region. So notice how the shaded region was over here, my bracket was facing that way. The shaded region is over here, so my bracket is facing this way. Same thing with these. If the shaded region is in here, this bracket would face that way, and this parentheses would face that way. So then if I put them both together because of the or statement, then I transfer this one down to the number line and that one down to the same number line, and this becomes your solution. So that's the graph of the solution. And then if you put this region in interval notation and this region in the interval notation, be sure to include the U symbol in between so that the reader knows, or the computer knows, that the answer is this and this together, okay? Not two separate, but together they make the whole solution. And then last but not least, this is the problem we've seen before. X is between -2 and 5, so you shade between -2 and 5 on the number line. This -2 has a bar, so it'll be solid with the bracket facing the shaded region. This 5 does not have a bar, so it's an open circle with the parentheses facing the shaded region. So then your interval notation would be bracket -2 to 5 parentheses. And that is the end of this video, and I'll see you in the next one.